the Bryce Man. This is my channel, The Outside. I wanted to run my mouth for a little bit today about the Sumerian texts. It's one of the oldest known written anything in the world that we have access to that isn't being actively suppressed, even though it's being actively suppressed by all the greedy narcissists in the files. So, in a nutshell, 445,000 years ago, astronauts from another planet came to this planet in search of gold because they needed it for whatever reason. So they brought a slave race with them to toil and mine and toil and mine and toil and mine. And they did so for thousands of years until that slave race revolted. And they decided they didn't want to be in the mines anymore. So the Anunnaki slayed them and subjugated them. And to quell the rebellion and come up with a solution, their head scientist, Enki, took the shaggy ape-like creature that was wandering around on the planet at the time, which I happen to believe is Bigfoot. I do believe Bigfoot is the original humans on this planet, or one of. And they spliced their DNA with the DNA of this creature and made it smart and made it compliant and forced it to go toil and mine in the mines. And we're still doing it today. So these beings, these people, they're people. They're not gods, they're people. Just like you and me, flesh and blood beings. They can bleed and die just like you and me. They're responsible for the pyramids, they're responsible for the Sphinx, they're responsible for math and agriculture, and they're responsible for peopling us all across this planet. They created the Native Americans, they created the Mayan culture, they created the Chinese people, they created the Hindu, they created the Iraqis, they created any color you are on this planet that's due to them. That's what they did. They made us in a lab. They made us with science. Kind of like we're doing today with AI. I do believe these beings are probably also responsible for AI, but that's a whole nother story for another time. Yeah, these beings are responsible for the Tower of Babel, the destruction of the Tower of Babel, the confounding of our language as a species. Before that incident, we all spoke the same language. We could all understand each other. We could all form agreements. And we did. We built a tower to try to achieve godlike status. To try to be with these people. To try to, show them that we're good enough and all like that. And what did they do? They said, no, you cannot do that. That's ours. We will destroy you and we will confound your languages. And so they gave us multiple languages, and then we as human beings have been in war ever since. Unable to understand each other. I do believe that's changing right now. Right now in our time, we're coming back to an agreement, aren't we? Globally. Thanks to the internet. That's fucking interesting. I'll get into that at some point too. But yeah, these beings, they saw a flood happening. And they allowed that to happen. The flood. It was a natural occurrence. Nature did that. No one else. But they allowed it to happen. And Enki, the head scientist, knew that they allowed it to happen, and they were going to just let us all drown and die because they got tired of us, and because we're uncontrollable and loud, noisy, smelly, non-compliant. Enki saved us, saved a small part of us. He instructed the construction of the ark, and he saved one family. We're all roots of that family. believe that this information has been suppressed purposefully. If that's really our true origins, we need to know. And I'll tell you why I think that is the case, that this is the truth. Because of the tomb of Gilgamesh that was mentioned in the files, right around the same time, as I understand it, that the United States of America stormed across the desert with all those tanks and all those Humvees and all that shock and awe, and the bombing of Baghdad and the taking of the palace and the arrest and incarceration of Saddam Hussein and all those things. Right around that same time, apparently underneath of the Euphrates River was discovered the tomb of Gilgamesh. And apparently Hillary Clinton was like very interested in that. Why? What for? Because they wanted to hide that information. Gilgamesh was 2/3 divine. Well, he was 2/3 alien, basically. As these entities fancied themselves as gods. They're not gods. The whole concept of God was given to us by these creatures, by these people. They're not gods. The whole concept of God is false. And I'll tell you all about that. At any rate, yeah, so they probably cleaned out the tomb of Gilgamesh, and all that information, plus the mummy of Gilgamesh, is probably buried down in the bowels of the Smithsonian, right along next to the Kandahar giant, which are probably the same. They could probably come from the same family. But anyways, so I was listening to a radio program on Coast to Coast AM. George Norrie was hosting. Jim Mars was the guest. He wrote a book. I forget the name of the book. You're going to have to go look it up. Jim Mars was talking about the Ark of the Covenant and how Saddam Hussein at some point had all the information that went along with the Ark of the Covenant. So it started out, I guess, the Ark was in the Temple of Solomon, and there it stayed for quite some time. And that's a whole interesting subject too, the Temple of Solomon. I'll put that on my list. So the Knights Templar tunneled underneath of the Temple of Solomon and came up from below and absconded with the Ark of the Covenant and sent it off to France, buried it in the bowels of some church. Probably the same church that Jesus went to after he married Mary Magdalene after the resurrection, and he begot a bunch of kids, and there's that whole thing. So Hitler figured out where the Ark of the Covenant was, and he figured out that the Ark of the Covenant had a whole bunch of information in the form of tablets inside of it. I do believe they were copper, if I'm not mistaken, is what he said. At any rate, the Third Reich invaded France, didn't they? One of the places that they went was this church. And they dug up the floorboards, and they found the Ark, and they took it away over to Germany with them. Now is the time for you to start researching Hellboy and what all that was about, because the Nazis built the bell because there was anti-gravity technology in these tablets. That's where they got that information. It's not of this world. And they were into all that occult things, and they probably studied very in depth these tablets and trying to figure out what exactly is on them and all that stuff. And so the Third Reich fell, and then all of that information got scattered, I guess, according to Jim Mars. And apparently Saddam Hussein was actively searching for all of these tablets, and he was actively building himself quite a collection of Sumerian texts. Okay? Why? Because he apparently believed that he was the reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar and had some sort of divine right to rule. And in addition to that, he was supposedly on his way to go build an Anunnaki theme park, and he was going to tell the entire world our true origins, that we are from the stars. We are half star people and half earth. That's our lineage. And what happened shortly after? Tanks cruising across the desert, shock and awe, bombing the palace, all that stuff. So according to Jim Marrs, they were storing all of this information down in the basement of the museum in Baghdad, is what he said. And I'll tell you what, I was driving a taxi around Colorado Springs. I was serving the Fort Carson soldiers. That was my bread and butter. They're great fucking people. And I love serving them. And I love all the stories and all like that. And one night I picked up this guy, soldier. And we got to talking about all kinds of things. And he was telling me that he was in that unit. Tanks cruising across the desert, Humvees. He was in one of the Humvees. He was part of that shock and awe unit. And so I was like, my eyes lit up. I was like, really? And so I grilled him about it. I was like, so where did you go? What did you do? Who did you find? What happened? And he was telling me, yeah, we got to the palace and it was deserted. There was nobody there. We took it, cleared it. Took about 5 minutes and we're done. And I was like, oh, okay, they must have knew you were coming. And he was like, oh yeah, they knew we were coming. They were waiting. They scattered like cockroaches. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. Where did you go after that? He says, that's really an interesting question. We went across the street to the museum. And I'm like, well, why were you in the museum? You're the Army. You don't have nothing to do with that. He's like, yeah, I know. I don't know why we were there either. But we were pulling out bases and artifacts and all these things. And we were trying to save them so they weren't broken. And he kept going on and on about the likeness of Saddam Hussein's face in the nice pretty tile mosaic floor in the grand entry of the museum. And he was like, yeah, it's Saddam Hussein, but man, this thing was amazing. It's beautiful. I've never seen nothing like it, and everything. And then he kept going on and on about the stuff they were pulling out of the museum, and how they were pulling so many gold bricks out of that museum that they didn't know what to do with them. So they were weighing their tents down with gold bricks so they didn't blow away in the wind and things. And then I asked him. I says, did you go in the basement? And he looked at me like I had just grown another head. Why in the hell are you asking me that question? He said. That's a very interesting question. No, they would not let us go into the basement of the museum. They had that area roped off, and men in black suits were guarding the door. Men in black suits were guarding the door to the rooms that had all of the Sumerian tablets in them. Why? Because our government and the governments of the world and all the fucking, what do they call it, the Epstein gang, are all actively suppressing this information. They don't want us to know our true origins. They don't want us to know that. There's a lot of pieces that are coming together about that. And I think as time goes by, there's a lot more pieces that are going to be falling into place to come to the realization that most religions on the planet are a system of control. It even speaks of this in the Sumerian tablets, that religion was created as a system of control because we're uncontrollable and we're needed to provide a service, and that is extracting gold out of the earth for them. And we've been doing it the whole time. Wealth is retarded. Health is the new wealth. That's what we should be thinking about. Anyways, I'm going to be doing a lot of research, and I think all of you viewers and conspiracy theorists all ought to be doing the research religiously, as in like doing the religious research and trying to find all the truths that are there, that are being hidden from us. I believe a lot of the things, for example, that are in the Bible probably actually happened. But I also believe that probably a lot of that information has been twisted and contorted a little bit for manipulation purposes. And I also believe that a lot of it had been omitted. Because you know what? You go look at the Sumerian Enuma Elish, the epic of creation, their creation story. It is the book of Genesis, bro. Except for it's the rest of the book of Genesis. It's everything that has been omitted. You look at like Gnosticism, for example, the Gospel of Thomas, the Apocrypha of John, those things. I believe there's even a Gospel of Mary. The Enuma, or not the Enuma, the Talmud Emmanuel should be around, floating around in there somewhere. They're stealing our history. They're suppressing our actual history. And I think that in order for us to combat them, we need to know these things. And we as a species need to know these things. I believe that most of educated people are being told a bunch of fucking garbage. Yes, there are truths there, but those truths have been twisted and manipulated to serve them, to keep us subjugated. I don't think religion ought to be a thing. I think spirituality is the way. I think light is the way. The divine spark. That's all we need. That's all we'll ever need. We don't need to worship some fucking narcissistic bozo trying to control and subjugate us. Anyway, that's the end of my rant. I trust and believe I'm going to be looking into some ancient knowledge, okay? Because truth is there. And I think you all should too. End of sermon. You enjoy the rest of your day. Like, share, subscribe, all those things. I do appreciate it.